All right. All right. What is up? Welcome back to the Kentucky Talks podcast. Unfortunately, terrible game today. Not anything close to what I was expecting. Pretty low level football from the Cats today. Almost nothing to be excited about. Almost nothing to call a success. It was a genuinely poor performance all around from top to finish. And we did not look like a SEC football team. We did not look like we've looked over the past few years, past couple years, especially not last year. I think a lot of us, in fact, I think most of us Kentucky fans were spoiled by last season. I don't want to say anything like it's a fluke or anything, because it's not. This is a bridge year, and it always has been a bridge year. But we can't make excuses. If we want to complain in the preseason about how we get no respect, we got to go out there and we got to earn and maintain that respect, and we just did not do that today. We went into Williams-Brice Stadium, and we got blown out by a 1-3 team who is injured, banged up at almost every position. They're thin in the secondary. They've got a mediocre offensive line. They're starting a true freshman backup quarterback. Their run game hasn't been able to get going all year. They're one of the worst defenses in the entire country all season long. And we go in there, and I don't know what we were thinking or I don't know what our intentions were going into that game, but just like against Mississippi State, we walked in there flat, and we walked in there without a purpose, and we got blown out. And, that just can't happen. We'll get into really exactly what happened here in a minute, but let's just look at the stats to start out. Sawyer Smith went 11 for 32, 90 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 1 interception. That is an atrocious clip right there. That's about 33%, little under 33% actually, completion rating. We did not get over 100 yards passing in the game, and he averaged 2.8 yards per reception. His first 4 completions were all screen passes. We did not complete a forward pass for most of the first half. I think our first forward pass that was completed was in the tail end of the first half. So really just an abysmal performance in the passing game. Earlier in the week, Stoops came out and said how, he was like, you guys see what throwing the ball 41 times got us? And then we come out and throw it 32 times. And there were multiple instances where you can see offensive coordinator Eddie Grant on the sideline getting completely chewed out by Stoops. You could tell that Stoops was not happy with the play calling. I know for a fact that going into this game, our preference was to run the ball, and our focus was to run the ball. And we just didn't do that effectively today. We had 28 rushing attempts, so it was a pretty balanced game in terms of play calling. 34 passing attempts if you count Lynn Bowden's 2 passes for 7 yards. That's 34 passing attempts and 28 rushing attempts. That's actually a really balanced game. Chris Rodriguez, who's our third string running back, had 6 carries for 65 yards, averaging 11 per carry. He had a 44-yard run late in the game, which also resulted in him getting a touchdown on a goal line situation with only 3 minutes left in the game. It was our first and only score of the game. Lynn Bowden had 6 carries for 44 yards, averaging 7.3 per carry. He had a 26-yard run as well. AJ Rose went back to his whatever he was doing in the first 3 games. I guess his performance against Mississippi State was a fluke because he had 10 carries for 33 yards. His longest run was 7 yards. And no, while that's not terrible, that's also nowhere close to what we need. And then Cavassier Smoke had 2 carries for 7 yards, 3.5 per carry. And then he did not come back after halftime. Stoops said in the post-game show that he had a migraine and was not able to return. In the receiving game, Ahmad Wagner had 2 catches for 35 yards, averaging 17.5 per carry. He had a 26-yard catch that really added to that total. Josh Ali had 3 catches for 18 yards. 2 of those 3 catches were off screen plays. His longest was 9 yards. Lynn Bowden had his lowest reception total of the year with 3 catches for 18 yards, averaging 6 per reception. His long was 13 yards, and that was also off of a short yardage situation in which he was able to turn up the Jets. AJ Rose had 1 catch for 11 yards. Alan Daly had 2 catches for 8 yards, and Justin Rigg had 1 catch for 5 yards. Clevan Thomas added 1 catch for 2 yards. So, the opening drive. This is the 3rd straight game where we turn the ball over on the opening drive. That's just inexcusable. I mean, we can't go 3 games in a row where we waste our opening possession. This is also the 3rd game in a row where we've had at least 1 interception and at least 1 fumble result in a turnover. So I honestly can't remember a game in the Stoops era where we have looked this bad offensively. The only other game that really comes to mind is last year against Tennessee when we walked into Neyland Stadium and they beat us 24-7, which is exactly what we lost by today. However, I don't remember our offense being that stagnant. This is definitely the worst offensive performance I've seen in a Stoops era. From a Stoops era team, and now we've pretty much opened up the rest of the season for failure. We've got a bye week coming up, and if we cannot turn things around, and if we cannot successfully fix the necessary issues, then we have no way of succeeding. And it's going to be a long remainder of this season. I really can only see Vanderbilt and UT Martin as super winnable games. The rest are up in the air. It depends on how we react. In the post game, Mark Stoops said that Sawyer Smith is dealing with 2 injuries to his throwing arm, 1 to his wrist, which he suffered on a chase down tackle after he threw an interception against Florida. So his wrist is still bothering him, and the other one was suffered on a hit he took to his shoulder in the first half of the Mississippi State game, both of which are still hurting him. At the beginning of this week, Mark Stoops said that he could not even raise his arm at all. So, I mean, in the 6 days since he said that, I find it very hard to believe that Sawyer recovered even halfway. Sawyer Smith was probably playing at about 40% today, if I had to put a number on it. And that's just, when you look at the play call, having a guy who can barely throw the football, having him throw the ball 32 times is just absurd. It's unacceptable. We're only down 10 in the first half, and we feel the need to continue to throw the football. That's not something that can happen. All game long, we were calling for some sort of change at the quarterback position. And you know what? We cannot blame Sawyer Smith for this performance. That interception he threw on the opening drive was his fault. It was a bad throw. It could have resulted in a touchdown if he put a little more oomph on it, but he underthrew it, and it pretty much fell right into the South Carolina linebacker's hands. He got sacked 4 times, 3 times by the same player. The same defender for South Carolina had 3 sacks. That is just beyond unacceptable. You cannot allow one player to have 3 sacks. Our offensive line looked absolutely abysmal today. Our offensive line did not look like the top 3 offensive line that they were supposed to be coming into the season. I'm not even sure who it was that kept getting beat. I know Stenberg, Drake Jackson, and Landon Young are kind of our top guys, and those guys are the reason why our offensive line is considered to be so good. But I think the remainder of our guys on that line, like Nasir Watkins, Darian Kennard, those guys are still kind of up in the air on whether they're producing properly. And they kind of do tend to get beat a lot from what we see. Just an all-around poor performance. Defensively, I mean, 17 of South Carolina's 24 points were scored in the first half. We held them to 7 points in the first half. That is an entirely winnable game. If our offense was even halfway serviceable, we could have easily come back and won that game, and we could have won it by a considerable margin. Our defense really stepped up in the second half and stopped them. I mean, Ryan Helinski went 15 for 27 for 140 yards, averaging 5 per carry. He did not throw a single touchdown. He technically did not play that much better than Sawyer Smith did. When you look at the stats, Helinski did not play that much better than Sawyer Smith, but they were able to mask that up by both of their running backs had 15 carries. Both of their running backs had over 100 yards, and both of their running backs averaged more than 6.5 yards per carry. Tavian Feaster, who's the Clemson transfer, we talked about him in the previous podcast. He had 15 carries for 107 yards and 2 touchdowns, averaging 7.1 per carry. I talked about how he was the guy that we were going to have to try to stop and that he was going to be the one to tear us up, if anyone, and he ended up doing that. But the other running back, Rico Dowdle, had 15 carries for 102 yards, averaging 6.8 per carry, and added on a touchdown. Both of them broke 30-yard runs. And even their third-string quarterback, Mon Denson, had 10 carries for 41 yards, averaging 4.1 per carry. That's 247 rushing yards on the game. When you have 2 running backs go over 100 yards, there is something seriously wrong. I know our secondary has been a problem all year, but I can't lie to you. I think our secondary was probably the most impressive part of our defense today. We did not allow Helinski or any of the, they have some fantastic receivers. Brian Edwards and Shi Smith are both great receivers, and their tight end, who leads the SEC in tight end receptions, did not have a single catch all game. So I think we did a good job on the defensive front in terms of stopping the pass. I think we stopped the pass pretty darn well. You cannot blame the secondary for this game, especially in the second half. I think they played really well. The only thing you can really blame on them was tackling, but you can't even blame that only on them. Our linebackers struggled to tackle. We didn't get very many tackles in the backfield. There were multiple occasions where we had them stopped in the backfield and just could not get the stop. They would break free, they would slip free, and they would get a positive gain, whether it be 2 or 3 yards. That's just demoralizing for a defense when you're getting and that's been happening all year. We'll get a hit in the backfield and they'll somehow escape and turn it into a positive game. That just can't happen. Something has got to change because we've got a lot of talent on the defensive front. We've got really good linebackers, and we've got a really solid defensive line. A big positive from our defense today was Boogie Watson, a guy who has not had a sack all year. He was supposed to be the spiritual successor to Josh Allen, and then he ends up really just laying an egg and not playing well at all this season. Had 2 sacks today, as well as a tackle in the backfield. On the running back, Calvin Taylor continues to be the most consistent player on that defensive front. He's been a freak of nature, and honestly, if he keeps this up, he could play his way into being a draft pick. DeAndre Square kind of disappeared today. He did not have the game that he's been having. Chris Oates and Yusuf Corker were our leading tacklers with 9 and 8 apiece. And defensively, I don't think the defense lost us this game. We got off to a sluggish start defensively, but I think I kind of think we found our groove, especially in the second half. We did a great job. They scored 7 points in the second half, so we cannot blame the defense for this loss. In my honest opinion, if you had to place the blame mostly on one thing or one individual, I think Eddie Gran is, a lot of people defend Eddie Gran. A lot of people are, Eddie Gran led us to 10 wins last year. And it makes me so annoyed when people say that. Benny Snell, Lynn Bowden, and Terry Wilson led us to 10 wins last year. When you've got a guy that you can run up the middle and he's going to get a first down or break a long one for a touchdown, a guy who completely demoralizes the defense like Benny Snell did, a guy who wears out the defense so much that you could throw your backup in, run him one time, and he takes off for a 20-plus yard gain almost every time, which is what happened last year with A.J. Rose. When you've got a guy in Lynn Bowden who is able to run free because the defenses are so focused on Benny Snell, and he's able to just take off for big gains, in Terry Wilson who can deliver the deep balls and who can deliver the intermediate passes. You cannot, I mean, the play calling was still extremely suspect last year, but we had so much talent and so much, so many big time players on that offense that we were able to do that. And this year we have probably arguably more talent than we did. We just don't have that one guy in Benny Snell who can line up in the backfield and get the first down and get the touchdown every drive, every play. We don't have that guy who can chip away at the defense and demoralize the defense. We don't have that guy. We don't have Benny Snell lining up in that backfield. And it seems like Eddie Gran, I mean, I tweeted this out. Eddie Gran made 0 offensive adjustments. We came into the second half playing the exact same as we did in the first half. You know how many first downs we had in the entire first 2 quarters? 2. We had 2 first downs. We had a turnover on the first drive. And then we went 3 and out like 4 times in a row. Then we would get a first down and then back to, another 3 and out. It's just, we continued to try to throw short to intermediate passes. We kept trying to throw screens. We kept trying to throw wheel routes and fly routes, and it wasn't working. Sawyer Smith is injured. He cannot throw the ball. He had no touch, no zip, nothing. Every ball that Sawyer Smith threw tonight was a duck, or it was extremely off target, or there was some sort of miscommunication between the quarterback and the wide receiver. And Eddie Gran, after every single game, when he's asked by the reporters what they need to do better, he has the same response every single week. Oh, we need to, we've got to do better. It's my fault. We'll get in the film room. We'll look at what's better, and we'll be better next week. He said that after the Mississippi State game, and we somehow came out and looked even worse. We looked like a Division II school out there. Toledo's offense had more firepower against us than we did against South Carolina today. Like, that's unacceptable with the recruiting that we've been doing. I mean, I understand that losing Terry Wilson was a huge blow. I understand that. And Sawyer's banged up. I mean, just think about it. Sawyer was the backup for Troy last year. And we expect him to come out against SEC defenses and succeed at a high level. I mean, we can't expect that out of him, especially not when he has 2 separate injuries to his throwing arm. His shoulder is inflamed and injured, so he cannot get the lift or the touch on the ball that he wants. And then he can't get the zip on the ball because his wrist is injured. The zip on the ball is all in the flick of the wrist. I guarantee with that injured wrist, he can't flick his wrist like that. So we've got to rely on short yardage ducks, and then we're like, oh, I guess we'll finally throw downfield to Ahmad Wagner, and he makes 2 huge plays. Both of Ahmad Wagner's catches were first downs. I don't know. In the post game, Stoops came out and he said, maybe we should have put Lynn at quarterback earlier. And it's just like our only scoring drive was in the fourth quarter with a couple minutes left, where we put Lynn Bowden in at quarterback. Finally, it looked like they were going to throw Walker Wood in there, and they didn't. They ended up going with Lynn. Lynn took that glove on his right hand off, so that's how you knew it was for real and that he was our quarterback for the rest of the game, because Lynn made a solid completion. I mean, he made like an 8-yard completion to, I think it was Josh Ali, for a 9-yard. No, it was an 8 or 9 yard gain. I mean, he showed that he can sling that ball. I mean, I'm not saying Lynn Bowden is a better passer than Sawyer Smith, but it was really abominable to me and completely unacceptable. And Twitter agreed. I was seeing this all over Twitter that, why are you playing a guy who is injured? He's out there taking hits. It's not working. You're just going to get him more injured and more banged up. It seemed like every time Sawyer got hurt, he was slow to get up. He was limping. I mean, the guy couldn't run. He couldn't throw. You have to make an adjustment. You have to. And then we throw Lynn in at quarterback, and it works out. We immediately drive down the field and score. Now, people are going to say, oh, it was against their second and third strings on defense, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. You cannot continue to do the same exact thing over and over and over and over again and expect a good result. You can't do that. It baffles, it blows my mind. I am entirely mind boggled. I am bamboozled. I don't understand what the play calling was and what the personnel decisions were. Sawyer Smith was so incapable of being out there, and it's not his fault. He's hurt. He is hurt. And this coaching staff knows he is hurt. And Coach Stoops complained last week about how many times we threw the ball. We came out and threw the ball only 9 less times than we did last week. The run game worked to an extent. Lynn Bowden averaged 7 yards per carry. Rodriguez averaged 11 yards per carry. Rose averaged 3 yards per carry, which isn't great, but it's decent. It's not awful. And Cavassier, who has been really good all year, I understand he was hurt, but 2 touches in the first half for our most dynamic runner is unacceptable. It doesn't make sense. You can't say, oh, we were down. We were down 10 points. You can still run the ball when you're down 10 points. There is no reason to panic. It doesn't make sense. I truly don't understand. Keaton Upshaw didn't have a single reception today. He looked frustrated on the sideline. The last thing we need is for Upshaw to transfer or whatever, because he's a weapon and he's a young guy who's going to get a lot of opportunities if he's used properly. But the quarterback situation killed us today. And again, it's not Sawyer Smith's fault. It's not. Lynn Bowden should have been at quarterback at the start of the second half. I get what they're trying to do to an extent, but at the end of the day, you cannot continue. I mean, we did the same thing against Mississippi State. We did not adjust. We threw the ball over and over and over again, despite it not working. And then here against South Carolina, we throw the ball over and over and over again, despite it not working. You can't do that. If the defense knows what we're going to do. Oh, by the way, I really want to make a point on this. At halftime, when they interviewed Will Muschamp as he was coming off the field, they interviewed Will Muschamp. He comes off the field. They ask him a question, what did you see on defense? Or what did you see on offense through that Kentucky defense? And he goes, oh, yeah, we gotta just keep running the ball to the nub side. We got to get in a 12-man formation and run, or not 12-man formation. We got to stay in 12 formation and run the ball to the nub side. And like he literally gave out his game plan. He literally told us what he's going to do. We come into the second half, and the first play in the second half is like a 30-yard touchdown run in the exact formation and direction that Muschamp said going into the second half. He told us what he's going to do and still did it and scored a touchdown. It's ridiculous. And then after the game, they were like, hey, about what you said at halftime, what was with that? And he goes, yeah, I liked what I saw with their numbers on that side. They didn't adjust to the way we were playing, so we just kept hitting it. And it's like, how? Stoops is a defensive-oriented coach. He coached one of the number 2 defense in the country at Florida State. How do you go from that to Will Muschamp, who is also a defensive guy and has been offensively challenged since he got there? How do you allow him to continue to exploit the same thing over and over? How do you go into halftime and you see that is a problem and not adjust to that? I don't even know what to say. That's atrocious. How do you allow that to happen? We targeted Ahmad Wagner 3 times, one of which was an overthrow. Some people say Ahmad Wagner ran the route wrong, but at the end of the day, Sawyer tends to throw the ball towards where their guy's supposed to be in the route and where the route is supposed to go and not where the guy actually is. Take that as you will. But I don't know. It's mind-blowing how incapable we are of making adjustments. And it seems like ever since the fourth quarter of the Florida game, where we choked the game away and lost, we've just not been the same. We got into the red zone one time against the 115th ranked defense in the country. And you've got some guys on Twitter, I don't want to call out anyone, but you got some people on Twitter saying that, no, we just not, it's a problem of execution, not of play call and not of personnel problems. Like, it's BS. Yes, it is. Entirely play calling. When you throw the ball 32 times with a quarterback who can barely move his arm, how is that not a play call problem? When you're seeing some semblance of success on the ground and you just don't go on to the ground, that is a play calling issue. I mean, I don't know. I think going forward, at least until Sawyer Smith is back to 100% health, going forward, Lynn Bowden should be our starting quarterback. Put the ball in the hands of your best player, your best playmaker, your number one offensive weapon. Put the ball in his hands. He can still hand the ball off. He can still screen pass to Ali or, do little drop-off passes. You can do so many RPOs with Lynn Bowden. Make the defense think that he's running to the outside. Have him pull up for a throw. I mean, that's just our best bet right now. The staff seemed so Stoops comes out in the postgame and says, oh, we have complete confidence in Walker Wood that he can get the job done. So then why do you see what's going on and you do not even give the kid a chance? He's been riding the pine for 3 years. He knows the playbook. If you're worried about having to simplify the playbook, you're going to have to simplify the playbook less for a 3-year guy who's been studying the playbook for 3 years than you are for a guy like Sawyer Smith who's only been here for a few months and who was a backup for Troy. Coming out of high school, Walker Wood, it would be considered a higher-ranked guy. At least give him a shot. Amani Gilmore may be a true freshman. They're trying to preserve his red shirt or whatever. I don't think they remember or realize that you could play 4 games without burning your red shirt. Try something else. Because what we saw today will not work. What we saw today from our quarterback position and from a play calling standpoint will not work. The only time the offense made any moves whatsoever was when we threw Lynn Bowden in at quarterback, and he made things happen because that's what he does. I don't get it. We just continue to beat a dead horse, and there's all these people defending Gran. I am so ready for Eddie Gran to be gone. I am so ready for it. It's got to happen someday. I hope he gets hired as a head coach for some FCS D1 school and just goes. Because we're not going to fire him. That's obvious. I mean, they're holding on to the fact that we had a good year last year. You know what? Our defense is the biggest and probably 80% of the reason we went 10-3 last year was our defense. We had one of the best defenses in the country. We don't have Josh Allen anymore. We don't have Derek Beatty, Mike Edwards, Devontae Robinson, Chris Westery, Lonnie Johnson. We don't have those guys anymore. Those guys are playing on Sundays now. We don't have the defense to carry the load anymore. You cannot continue to just do the same thing offensively. And that is truly, in the words of the great Albert Einstein, that is the definition of insanity. 32 passes from a quarterback who has 2 injuries to his throwing arm. His confidence is already shot. What are we doing? What's the play here? What is the objective? I'm heated, man. It's annoying. It's frustrating. This program is supposed to be over the hump, and we're going back to doing the same shit we were doing before. Everyone who said last year was just a fluke is being proven correct right now. And the fact that that's not in these guys' heads, maybe it is, but we're coming out there playing uninspired, playing with no energy. We didn't even have an opportunity to score a single time. We crossed midfield twice, and one time was because we got the ball in midfield. As everyone is saying, Max Duffy's our best player right now. How much more would we have lost by if Max Duffy didn't pin them inside the 10-yard line 5 separate occasions? You know what I mean? And we go for it on 4th down, and we go for it on 4th down in a 4th and 8 situation, and when we get sacked. Like our offensive line played terrible, quarterback played terrible. Granted, not much of his fault. Wide receivers weren't getting open. We just I think the only offensive unit that was halfway decent today was the running backs, and they just didn't get enough opportunities to thrive. You have one player with double-digit carries. That's A.J. Rose. You throw Chris Rodriguez in there, and he just bullies him. 11 yards per carry on 6 carries for 65 yards is extremely solid for a third-string running back. I don't know. Injury-wise, like they say, Sawyer's really banged up. He took even more hits. He's probably feeling even worse. He's going to be feeling even worse this week than he was this past week. But it's a good thing we've got this bye week coming up. That's all I can say. We've got a bye week coming up. So, I mean, we've got Arkansas's next. Arkansas hung in there tough with Texas A&M at Texas A&M today. Well, it wasn't at College Station, but it was in Texas. It was in Arlington. So, I mean, it was pretty much a home game for A&M. And Arkansas hung in there and stuck with them. Arkansas's got a great group of running backs. Great group of running backs. They've got 2 quarterbacks who are both extremely capable of coming in there and throwing the ball. Our defense is going to have a big challenge, but the number one challenge going forward, I mean, we've got 2 weeks to figure out how to fix this offense. 2 weeks to figure it out. We have this bye week and then the week leading up to the Arkansas game to figure things out. I would not be unhappy in the slightest if the news breaks tomorrow that Eddie Gran has been released from his position. He has done this since he got here. We have had one good year since he's been our OC, and we entirely relied on Benny Snell and Lynn Bowden, mostly Benny Snell. I mean, in three seasons, Benny Snell broke the record, broke the career rushing record. I mean, you're not going to have a guy like Benny Snell line up in that backfield anytime soon. Eddie Gran has not proven that he's capable of coaching an SEC offense. I don't understand why more teams don't go the younger offensive coordinator route. Teams like Oklahoma, who get a really young head coach who's entirely focused on scoring the ball. We already have a defensive-oriented head coach in Mark Stoops, so obviously he's never going to let defense, fall beyond what it's supposed to be. But offensively, we have always struggled. And it's because we're so hell-bent on hanging on to Eddie Gran because we expect and think that he's going to turn it around one day. He's not. He's been there for how long and continues to be a poor play caller, a poor decision maker, a guy who refuses to get his top talent involved. I'm over it. Most of BBN is over it. And yeah, I mean, everyone's going to say this, and I say this as well. We're not the coaches. We don't get paid. But some of this stuff just seems so self-explanatory and so blatantly obvious. It's just, I don't get it, man. I don't get it. I mean, losing Terry Wilson was much more of a blow than I expected it to be. I thought Sawyer was going to come in and be serviceable. And you know what? Against Florida, Sawyer was serviceable. Sawyer looked very promising against Florida. And again, you cannot blame the kid. He's got a wrist injury and a shoulder injury. 2 of the most important parts of a thrower. That's 2 injuries to his throwing arm. I mean, what do you expect? I mean, you got people calling for Sawyer Smith to never see the field again. I don't know if it's that serious. I think Lynn should be our guy to 100%. And then if we bring Sawyer back and he doesn't do as well as we did under Lynn, then you could put Lynn back in there. And Lynn Bowden doesn't practice as the quarterback, so he's obviously not going to know this. He's obviously not going to be as effective as of right now. But if you give Lynn Bowden these next 2 weeks to practice as the quarterback, to learn some plays, Lynn Bowden at the very least will make something happen. If he can't throw the ball, he will at least make something happen. 11 for 32 on Sawyer Smith's part is unacceptable with 4 sacks. Sawyer Smith can't get out of the pocket like Terry or Lynn Bowden could. And if our offensive line is going to allow that much penetration and allow our guys to get hit that much, then you have no choice than to put in a guy who's going to be able to slip free. Lynn Bowden has showed so many different occasions that he can evade tacklers and slip out of there and stuff. So why don't we go with that more? Like, I don't know. It's wild to me, but I don't know. I can't stand behind Eddie Grant anymore. Like, I've defended him in the past, and I can't do it anymore. Like, I cannot stand behind Eddie Grant at this point. We have no offensive rhythm. We have nothing going for us whatsoever, and it's truly sad to see. And like I said, I don't think I have seen an offensive performance this bad in the entire Stoops era. Everyone wants to talk about last year against Tennessee, but I think this was worse. We couldn't get anything going, nothing at all. 2.8 yards per pass. Sawyer with another 2 turnovers, a fumble and an interception. I mean, the kid can't do anything. What is expected of him if he cannot stand in the pocket for more than 4 seconds without getting hit? A lot of those incompletions were just because he had to force the ball out. Once again, which this has been an issue all season, but once again we had multiple drops. Josh Ali dropped a wide open pass where he could have turned it up for probably a 10-yard gain. And then Justin Rigg had a wide open drop. It wasn't wide open. He had a guy kind of on him, but you're that big of a target. You should be able to haul in a pass that you have the leverage on. Like, it's just ridiculous that we drop the ball this much. So, like I said, if I could pick out any positives from this game, Chris Rodriguez earned some playing time tonight. The guy runs with a chip on his shoulder. He runs forward. You know, I mean, he deserves more carries if that's how he's going to play. Cavassier, I hope he's all right. I hope he's not too hurt. But I don't know, man. It's demoralizing. It's demoralizing to see where this team is right now. It's demoralizing to see how far we've fallen from grace from last year, you know. And I want to believe that this program has turned around and that this is just a bridge year and that when our guys get some more experience, we'll be all right. But we've had situations like this before. I mean, do you remember the Andre Woodson years where that one year where we were ranked as high as 8th in the country? And we're like, all right, you know what? We're turned around. We're good to go. And then, back to the same old, same old. I'm very worried that that's going to happen again. I'm so sick of being the laughingstock and the doormat of the SEC. Like, I'm tired of it. It's embarrassing. It's ridiculous. And, you get our hopes up by having a really successful year last year. I mean, just think we beat a blue blood football program in Penn State in the Citrus Bowl last year. That's after having our best year ever. We finished in the top 10. It's like, all right, good. And then we go into this season, we start looking pretty solid, and then Terry goes down with the patella tear, and we're like, oh, God, that's not too good. And then we go into Florida, and we hang with them all game long, and our new backup quarterback is looking really decent, and we hang with them, and we choke the game away with stupid mistakes. And then from that point forward, we just go. It's like the team just lost all hope and lost all faith. And you got players coming on Twitter saying, oh, okay, I see what kind of fans we have, and it's just like, really, dude? Like, do you see what y'all are putting out there? Do you see what the product that's been put out there? I mean, can you really blame fans for being upset? I mean, it's a buzzkill. You go from last season getting our hopes up, making us think that we're going to be a top 3 team in the East for multiple years to come, and then we come and shit the bed like this. We lose all of our confidence because of a choke loss against Florida. It's just ridiculous. So I don't know. I've gone off on a tangent. This has definitely been the most passionate I've been on a podcast, but I'm tired of it, man. We're sitting there watching this game, completely baffled by the decisions that are being made. And I don't know. It's upsetting. It's frustrating. And maybe one of these days we'll truly get it turned around. We've got a great recruiting class coming in. I want to actually go and I want to take a look at this recruiting class so I can feel somewhat better about myself. and about this team. We'll screen share it. Let's see. Share screen. Let's see. This was this past year. By the way, let's just take a look at the. Sorry, my mic came unplugged right there. But yeah, let's just take a look at our this is our young talent we have right now. I mean, Jared Casey chose us over Oregon. These are all guys that are on the team right now. I mean, these are all guys that are going to make some sort of contribution in the future. I mean, Jared Casey and JJ Weaver both 4-star linebackers. JJ Weaver considered to be a Josh Allen type guy. He's 6'5", 240. He was a 4-star. You know what I mean? Like he's a really good guy. Jared Casey flipped from Oregon to us. Moses Douglas, who was another 4-star. He's a safety. He's a guy who's going to get some PT in the future. Devin Shire's really solid. Taj Dodson. Travis Tisdale was an ESPN 300 running back on ESPN. He's only seen as a 3-star here. But he's got the fastest 40 time on the team. Many people have compared him to Boom Williams. Tate Crooms, quick guy. Quandre Mosley was our Quandre Mosley and Brandon Eccles were our JUCO guys. So yeah, I mean, that's looking good for that year. And then if you just look at this, man, ESPN has Justin Rogers as a 4-star, or maybe it's Rivals that has Justin Rogers as Justin Rogers is a 5-star on Rivals. So he's one of our best players. I mean, even on 24/7, he's a top 50 player in the class. He's the number 1 player in Michigan and the number 3 player at his position, defensive tackle. So that's big. This 4-star defensive end, Samuel Anele, 6'4", 243, committed to us or flipped from Miami to us. So that's big. John Young is a big 6'6", 277 offensive lineman. That's some big time stuff. Juton McClain is a good running back that we got. Khalil Branham everyone's saying Branham is very similar to Lynn Bowden as kind of a guy who can, if you give him open space, he's done. He's done for. He's gone. Bo Allen is supposedly going to be our answer at quarterback for the future. I mean, he's playing really well right now. Another offensive tackle. This is a 6'2", 220 running back, so we'll see how that translates. A couple of wide receivers, corner. You know, we're adding to the secondary here. Watkins, I believe, is both a secondary player and a wide receiver. Another offensive tackle, DB, inside linebacker, and we're not done. We're supposedly there's a couple more 4-stars that we're seriously considering, or that are seriously considering us, and there's you know, a lot of room for excitement in terms of what we have coming in. But I mean, the focus right now is this team, and as of right now, we're just not looking good. And I hate being overtly negative about things. I hate being negative. I hate thinking that, you know, things are just going to go downhill. And I had just a pit in my stomach during the entire game today, even leading into the game. You know, I said in the preview podcast, I said, South Carolina is going to come into this game wanting it more. South Carolina is going to come into this game with more heart and more at stake. And that's what happened. They came out with a purpose. They came out knowing that they had to win this game. You know, this is a must-win for Muschamp. If Muschamp lost this game, he could have been fired on the spot. You know what I mean? Like this is an SEC team that has been, you know, worse than us. And any team who is worse than Kentucky over a 4 or 5 year span is probably, you know, that's not going to be seen as very good athletic director standards. So I don't know, man. I'm discouraged, but I think this bye week is coming at a perfect time. We have to make changes. Stoops said in his post game that, you know, they've got to start exploring more options offensively. Losing Benny Snell I knew it was going to be a big blow, but I figured we had enough talent all around to kind of make up for it. And we just either I was wrong about our talent, or the staff is not doing a good job of getting that talent, you know, ready to play and ready to go. So That's pretty much all I got. I want to talk more. I feel like I haven't gotten everything out, but I'm upset. I'm discouraged, and I know the players are too. And I'm not. I don't want to make it seem like I think the players don't care, that they're not trying, because I know they do. And I know they're giving. I know they're giving the best they got. And I mean, Sawyer Smith is probably playing through a level of pain that we couldn't even imagine. But at that point, it's not his fault. It's Stoops and Grand's fault for continuing to call plays that require him to perform at a high level, and it's Stoops' fault for not making the personnel change. We should have came into the second half with Lynn Bowden as the quarterback. That's the bottom line. Multiple instances where Cash Daniel is overreading and missing reads on defense that have led to big plays. I don't know how you can look in the film room and not start Chris Oates over him. I mean, I say this every time. I love Cash. Cash is not a starting caliber guy for our team right now. When we've got a guy sitting on the bench that chose us over Ohio State, who makes way less mistakes and ended up leading the team in tackles coming off the bench. Chris Oates led the team in tackles coming off the bench with 9 tackles. Led the team off the bench. He is a more cerebral player. He's a better athlete. He's a better talent. He's a better tackler. He's better at reading and he's better at reading the plays. He's better at coverage. Chris Oates should be our starting linebacker. He should be starting over Cash. I understand Cash has earned this spot. You could still be a captain off the bench. Just switch their playing time. Let Chris Oates play as the starter and play as much as Cash is playing now, and let Cash play, some less snaps. And I don't know. Again, I'm not a coach. They'll figure it out or they won't. Either way, my biggest concern is that we can't lose commitments. Playing like this is how you lose commitments. This happened to Louisville. This happened to Miami. This happened to Tennessee. Whenever a team starts looking like they're not what these recruits thought they were, they will leave in a heartbeat. Football players have the biggest tendency to decommit. Basketball players don't really decommit. Football players decommit like crazy. So I showed the recruiting class a minute ago. Some of these guys could be gone. You never know. And some of these big name 4-star recruits that we're in contact with that we're making their top 3 and their top 2 may end up changing their mind and deciding to go somewhere else. And that's what I'm most afraid of, because the only way we're going to go upward and trend upward is if we get the talent to do so. Although you got teams like Iowa, who's ranked in the top 15, who there's no way Iowa's recruiting classes are that much better than ours, and yet they continuously, are ranked and are playing better than we are. So, I don't know. I don't even know. I've not been this disappointed in a Kentucky football game in a while. I mean, this one hurts for sure, but maybe we could take advantage of the bye week. I think if we can go in and beat Arkansas, maybe we could get back up to 500 and our season can have new life. Because if we beat Arkansas, then we can definitely beat Tennessee, Louisville, Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt picked up their first win of the season today against Northern Illinois, which, call that an accomplishment if you want, but I think that we should definitely beat Vanderbilt. But I'm no longer confident on any game this year other than maybe UT Martin. I no longer have any confidence. All right, well, I have a certain level of confidence, but I'm no longer as confident as I was going into these games. I think Missouri is almost a sure loss at this point. Georgia is going to be a bloodbath. Tennessee might be turned around by that point in the year. Arkansas has got a lot of they're kind of emerging and they're finding their identity. And I don't know too much about Louisville. I know they don't really have that much talent, but honestly, South Carolina didn't have that much talent, and they just blew us out. I didn't even mention this, but Mississippi State, who, by the way, beat us to a pulp last week, went and got absolutely dead by the Auburn Tigers today. Now I understand it's Auburn, but like, I mean, I just want to take a look here at the whatever the score was. I mean, I know it was really ugly. 56-23. So the team that just blew us out, 56-23 to Auburn, got completely obliterated. They allowed 6 rushing touchdowns. Like, I don't know. I'm upset. That's all I got to say. But yeah, anyone who's watching this podcast back, watching the replay, I appreciate you. If we have any news this week, enough news to do a podcast, I'll do one. But since we don't have a game this week, I'm not going to be doing a preview. I'll probably only do one podcast this week, discussing whatever's going on with whatever happens this week, whether it be news or whatever. And yeah, we'll probably be back in full force with an Arkansas preview in a couple weeks. And then, I don't know, hopefully we can pull that game out. So yeah, excited for Big Blue Madness this week. And that's pretty much all I got to say for today. So hopefully we can get things turned around and, figure it all out. But yeah, go Big Blue, and I will see you guys in the next one.